My name is John Gekonyo, and I'll be demonstrating how to install Omeka, a web publishing application that runs on a LAMP server. Welcome. For this installation, we shall require a download of the package of the Omeka application. This you shall get from omeka.org. We shall also need a LAMP server on which to install the application, and I have a cPanel account prepared for this. We shall also require a HTML editor for purposes of editing the configuration file, and I have a Dreamweaver editor. We shall use the secure shell to make file system changes during our installation. One can also use a file manager, and we will start the process by going to the Omeka download site, and we shall copy the link of the application download. So I have copied that link. Then I will go to my shell, secure shell, and I am going to type the following command, and when I enter, I am now getting a download of that archive. It basically takes a few seconds because we are transferring from one server to the other, and that is why this is quicker, because we do not have to download it locally and then upload it to the server where we are making this installation. We now have a copy of the archive of the Omeka application. So it is still in the archive form, it is zipped, therefore it's not yet installable. So what we need to do next is actually explode it or expand it so that we can be able to run the installer files. Now, to expand that archive, we need to type in the following command. Okay, so this is the unzip command, and when I run that command, what it's going to do is to expand that archive. And let's have a look at how this looks on the server. So now we have our initial archive, that is what we downloaded, and we also have a folder that has been created. Now this is the folder where the expanded application has been placed. What we really need to do is to move those files from that folder so that they are going to be in the root of the web folder. I do this by going into that new created folder, okay, and there you can see the folders and the files that were created when we expanded or unzipped the archive. And I'm going to run the following command so that I can move all these files and folders to the root of the website. Okay, and as you can see, we have moved all the files and folders to the root of the website. So I am going to change and go to that directory. We have our application where we need it. We can proceed and delete the downloaded archive. We do not need it anymore. Yes, and we have removed that archive. Now that we have the files where they should be on the server, we are going to turn our attention to preparing a database to go with this installation. Omeka uses a MySQL database, and in the next few steps we are going to prepare this database. I go to the control panel, and I'm on the page where I can be able to create a database and other required items. Specifically, we also need to create a user and associate that user with the database. So to prepare the database, I type in the database name, okay, and I say or click on create database, and that database has been created. Next, we are going to create the user for this particular database, and we do this by typing in the name of the user and typing in the user password and creating the user. Again, I have noted the username and the password associated with that user for our configuration later on when installing Omeka. So that is complete, and the final step is to associate that user with the database. As you can see at the bottom here, we have got the user that we've just created and the database that we've just created, and we need to associate the two. So we add that user to the database and we confirm the privileges that we are going to give this user, and we allow for those changes, and that is completed. We now turn our attention to configuring the database that we have just created within the Omeka application, and we are going to use the HTML editor for this. So I've gone to my Dreamweaver application and I can take a look at how my files look like on the server, and this here is a file that contains the database information, the connection information to the database. So I am going to get this file from the remote server, and this makes it possible for me to edit it locally on my Dreamweaver application. And I open it, and as you can see, the settings for the host, the username and the password are basically just placeholder blanks, and this is where we are going to put in our actual information so that the application can connect to the server. So I will just edit all this information, and I'm going to put in our particular values for the database that we just created, and these here are the correct values, and I'm going to upload that to the server. So saved and uploaded to the server through my local Dreamweaver editor, and now we have got the correct connection information to the database. To install the application, we go to a new tab on our web browser and we type in the URL to the root of the web folder where we put in our files. So this for our installation is going to be that URL, and as you can see, we were able to get to that folder, but we have an installation error. So this happens many times when you are doing these kinds of installations, and the good thing is by just looking at the errors that are reported, you can be able to troubleshoot and you can be able to rectify whatever is not right and proceed with the installation. So looking at this message here, I can see that it has got something to do with the permissions on this particular folder. So I will again use my shell access. It allows me to easily do these kinds of changes, and I am going to essentially change the permissions for the entire archive folder and subfolders by running this command. Okay, so this should rectify that problem, and I can go back to the installation screen and refresh it and see whether that has been rectified. And as you can see, we now have the error not appearing anymore, and we can proceed with our installation. Provide a username. I will use a simplified name, admin. I'm keeping it simple, but you probably may need to use much more secure naming systems. I will also use a very simple password. Okay, again, in real practice, you want to make sure that your passwords are secure. I'm going to type in the email address for this particular user, the admin, and I'm going to use the same address for the administrator email, and I'm going to give our site a title, Omeka demo, and I'm going to use the same for the site description. Ideally, you can put some much more meaningful information here in terms of a description, and I'm going to leave the rest of the information with the default values. I think that should be adequate to get the installation going, and it demonstrates that we can effectively be able to follow those steps to install Omeka. And there we go. Omeka installation is complete. Omeka is installed, and we are asked to remove the install directory for security reasons. And we can then proceed to go and look at the public site, which basically is what the regular users will see. And we also have the administration panel, which is where the people who manage the installation of the application work through. So let's start by removing this install directory. It's important to do this because it has got some bearing on security, because those installation scripts can still be used by people to modify the site, so they are best removed. And I will go back to my shell and access the file system and remove that installation directory, install folder. And as you can see, we have removed it. The next thing is now we can test whether we are able to open the public site and the admin panel. I'll open them in separate tabs. Open in a new tab, and as you can see, we have the public application working. We have got the public site working. Again, I'll go to the admin panel, and again we have that opening. Let me try to log in using the username that we just created. We used the username admin, and we used a simple password. Let's log in, and success, we have a working installation of Omeka. As you have just seen, this process takes about 15 minutes. It requires some technical skills, skills that most people would have as long as they are able to run computer applications. Thank you for taking the time to view this tutorial.